The Chief Minister decides to go to Churachandpur. The mob burns down half the setup and vandalizes the rest. Internet shutdown follows. Section 144 is imposed and then night curfew comes into place. Local media channels start blaming Myanmar people for the protests, and that is not even the subject of this video. Manipur, people, Manipur. The past month or so has been, to put it mildly, an exciting time for journalists in the state and those who follow the state closely. MLAs are allegedly resigning because they have no job to do. The NRC issue is picking steam in the state. Watch this video by clicking the link in the description. And now, it seems that the state's Meitei population might be on the highway to getting the scheduled tribe status. At least the Manipur High Court sees the rationale behind the demand. And are people divided on the issue or what? The Manipur High Court's order directing the state government to consider a demand to include the Meitei community in the scheduled tribes list has, to put it mildly, left the state on edge. On April 19, the High Court in its order asked the government to consider the case of the petitioners of inclusion of the Meitei community in the scheduled tribe list expeditiously, preferably within a period of 4 weeks. Now, I know that at EastMojo we will be walking on glass while addressing this topic, and rightly so. One mistake and the comment section will go boom. Our audience has always held us accountable for our content, and rightly so. Recently, an opinion column by one of our contributors evoked a strong response, mostly negative, with people claiming we are anti-Meitei. First, remember that an opinion column is just that, an opinion column. It is not our view, it is your view, you being the reader. On Saturday, we published another column on the issue written by Thiren Sadokpam, the editor-in-chief of the Frontier Manipur, who explains the issue from a different perspective. Opinion columns are meant to initiate discussions and start conversations. They do not indicate our stand on an issue. Our stand is only reflected in our editorial columns. Now, coming back to our topic on this week's Decoded. For months.
Village of Assam in the 75th Independence Day.
The court process can be extremely mundane and oftentimes boring for most of us, especially for those who are not involved in court-related matters. This perhaps explains why few people in Manipur, if any, batted an eyelid at what conspired in the High Court on March 27. And to understand what happened in 2023, we must go back to 2013. Yes, 10 years ago, when Achhedin had just gained ground. WhatsApp was still a few years from becoming a full-fledged university, and Indians were waiting for 15 lakh rupees to arrive in their accounts. In May 2013, the Union Ministry of Tribal Affairs had sought the views of the Manipur government on the matter, and that was that, pretty much. The demand would surface every now and then, but if a story from The Hindu published in 2022 is to be believed, there were no takers for the ST status demand among the Meiteis. In fact, I was there in Manipur during our extensive coverage of the Manipur elections, and I can say with absolute surety that the ST demand for Meiteis was not even a topic of discussion among the Meiteis, neither by the government nor by the opposition. Let me add that the water crisis was a far more important issue than the demand for ST status, and that is understandable. This is why when the court verdict came, initially there was no response, and it was not until the verdict was made online in April that the controversy started. No sooner did the court order become public than the noise around it began. All Tribal Students Union Manipur, the United Naga Council and several other tribal organizations expressed shock at the order and questioned the government's stance in allowing this to happen. Fingers were pointed at several parties and people, especially the Department of Tribal Affairs and Hills. What were they doing while this was happening? Was it brought to the knowledge of the Chief Minister and the Minister in charge of the TA&H? Was there inaction on the part of the state government? The Hill Areas Committee, or the HAC, came out with a resolution on April 20, wrongly understanding that the order was passed on April 19. the date when it was digitally verified and uploaded to the Manipur High Court website, urging the state government to file an appeal. For the tribal organizations from Manipur, the verdict should not have happened had the state government done its job. But what is the government's job here anyway? To defend the tribals or to support this demand of the Meiteis? That is a complicated question with no correct answer. The STs of Manipur have made it clear that such a demand of the Meiteis goes against the constitution of India, and if implemented, it can have disastrous consequences for them. How? Manipur is an imbalanced state, so to speak. The state has, as we have repeated in over 100 videos by now, the hills and the valley. The Imphal Valley, that is, the valley is the home of almost all the Meiteis of the state and quite a few tribals too. The valley has about 60% of the population, but only about 10% of the state's geographical region. The hills, on the other hand, have 90% of the geographical area, but barely 40% of the population. Now, depending on how you see it, this can be a problem for both the hill residents and the valley residents. The valley is where the power lies. The state of Manipur has had only one tribal chief minister in the 70s. The rest have been from the valley. The valley also sends more MLAs to the assembly, but then it has more people, so that is understandable. The biggest issue here is, at least for the outsiders to understand, is the access, ownership and thereby control of the resources. You see, Meiteis point out that while they cannot buy land in 90% of the state's territory, everyone else can buy land in the valley. This, they say, has created a huge imbalance in the valley, and the demand for ST status is one step towards addressing this. But like most demands in the Northeast, this seems easier said than done. One of the most important points raised by non-Meiteis in response to the ST demand is that the Meiteis currently do have SC and OBC status. Now let us assume the community gets ST status. What happens to the OBC and SC status then? And will it mean the Meiteis and the Nagas of Manipur will all be competing in the same pool? Some Meiteis have argued that they deserve the ST status, as they too are an indigenous population, and before India's independence and Manipur's merger with India, Meiteis were recorded in history books as tribes. So the demand for ST is not a new one, rather it is simply correcting a decades-old mistake. In this article, published in the Imphal Free Press in October 2022, Sanjan Bam Jugeshwar Singh argued that many writings of the Britishers of the colonial era and in their accounts, the Meitei were often directly or indirectly referred to as tribals. Inquisitive minds may refer to the accounts of Pemberton Gordon, T.C. Hudson, William McCallum, etc. Even by post-independence Indian cultural anthropologists recognized Meiteis as tribal Hindu of Northeast India. According to the census records of 1891, 1901, 1931, the Meitei was once scheduled tribe. But from the gazetteers of 1951 onwards, Meitei has been removed from the ST list of Indian Union without any information or communication to the people of Manipur as well as to the government of Manipur, even without the approval of Minister of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. That's what he argues. Thiren Sadokpam, the editor-in-chief of the Frontier Manipur, believes looking at the ST demand from a different perspective. For mainland India, these terms are defined in relation to the hereditary caste order, whereas for Northeast India, the same has been defined by amorphous understandings of communities guided by the colonial agenda of the British, whose administrators first chose to categorize people from the mixed prism of the caste order or an anthropological understanding of a system which they considered was durable. This is what Thiren argues. Are Meiteis indigenous? Of course. Do they have as much right to protect their land as the state's tribal population gets under Article 371? Why will I argue against that? I will in fact add that the NRC demand in Manipur is also essentially a demand to protect what is ours. Also, it is not as if the Meitei community has demanded something out of the ordinary. These claims have takers in other regions of the Northeast too. In Assam, 6 communities, Tayahum, Motok, Moran, Sutia, Kosh Rajbongsi and Adivasi have long been agitating to this end. Imagine now, a community literally named Adivasi which in Assam refers to, well, Adivasis brought in mostly against their will to toil for centuries in the state's tea gardens and to work in the forests. A community called Adivasi does not enjoy ST status. Makes sense to you? Yep, not to me. The Meiteis, as indigenous people of the valley, have the right to ask for the protection of their land and culture just as any other community. But then, does it mean that our understanding of who is an ST in the northeast is flawed? Maybe the larger question is, how will the government understand and implement this? And will this once again put the Chingtam unity in Manipur in danger? Only time will tell.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to EastMojo. For any queries, put them down in the comments section below and press on the bell icon for notifications.